They were close. They were so close. The Memphis Grizzlies hung in there with the Los Angeles Lakers all game, led for a lot of the second and third quarters, but then that veteran experience of LeBron James and Anthony Davis took over down the stretch. We got a lot to talk about. How did Zach Edey perform? Some key Taylor Jenkins decisions and much more here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm here in Los Angeles after this game against the Lakers. The Grizzlies lose 128-123. Closely fought game, a really good game between both teams. I thought the Grizzlies overall played well. This is not a game anyone should be discouraged by any means, considering the number of players that the Grizzlies were missing and all of that good stuff and whatnot. But today's episode, don't forget, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Also, make sure you remember that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies Daily Newsletter, your one-stop ultimate stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. So, yeah, 128-123 Grizzlies loss. Overall impressions from this game was, one, this team fought. Two, like I said, nothing to be discouraged by. I don't think this is a game where you say, "Oh, this is a game that's going to make or break anything." I was in the locker room. There were a couple guys, like Jalen Wells, wasn't too happy about his performance. He felt like he could have been better and whatnot. And I get it. Jalen Wells got the initial assignment on LeBron James, and as we'll talk about, a little bit later here, LeBron James had a pretty good game. So, learning lessons for the rookie there. And there was learning lessons for another rookie as well, and Zach Edey. We'll talk about him more in our second segment. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. But we can start on a good note with Jaren Jackson Jr. And look, Jaren Jackson Jr. has been really good for a while. We've touched on it over the last year and change, right? I remember a couple years ago we were talking about just the flashes. Like every now and then he'd have the flashes of dominance. And then last season, it was kind of the bright spot, right? Along with Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams turning into what they became. A big bright spot for last season was Jaren Jackson Jr. just having no choice but to be the guy. He had no choice but to be the guy who had to go out there and create for himself, create for his teammates, and be that alpha. And that is carried over into this season. And that was a question that many people had was, how can he capitalize on that experience and really turn it into something good? Because being around this team, I hear Ja Morant say it all the time. Ja always is saying no one can guard Jaren Jackson Jr. We're starting to see it, like really, really see it. Like we see flashes of it, but in this game, Anthony Davis couldn't do it. LeBron James couldn't do it. Jaren Jackson Jr. finished with 29 points in this game, and I don't even think that really did his night justice. 10 of 20 from the field, 2 of 7 on three-pointers, 7 of 8 from the line, so he was getting fouled. Of course, he had 2 steals and a block mixed in there. Oh, while dealing with some foul trouble, by the way. So he played 33 minutes, but he was on track to play even more. He had 5 fouls in this game, 29 points, 7 boards. Mind you, he had his first basket, and his only 2 points of the first quarter came near the end of the first quarter. So pretty much this 27 points was scored over 3 quarters. In that fourth quarter was limited time because of the foul trouble. So after the first quarter, he pretty much was playing at a pace where he was like playing at a like how he was playing against the Wizards, where he was on pace for like a 40-point game. He played a real big role in getting Anthony Davis in foul trouble. Anthony Davis had 5 fouls, by the end of the third quarter. So that impacted how much the Lakers were able to play him in the fourth, which ended up not mattering as much because Anthony Davis had 11 points in the fourth quarter. But we'll get more into that later. But Jaren Jackson Jr. just looks so dominant right now, and it makes you wonder because the Grizzlies in this game they lost because late in the fourth quarter the other team executed better. Eventually, you're going to have the option of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Where it's like, oh, if Ja has the advantage, go cook, go in the game first. What do they say? Call 12. Time to call 12. But then there's going to be nights where Jaren Jackson Jr. has the advantage, and you can rely on him. And the Lakers kind of late in the game, they loaded up the defense a lot in Jaren's direction. Then there were a couple, shots like I think Scottie Pippen Jr. When the Grizzlies were down 6, drove to the basket. When Jaren Jackson Jr. first checked in the game, they were down 116, 110. A little bit over 4 minutes left in the game. This was when Jaren had 5 fouls, so Taylor Jenkins took him out for a couple minutes. Jaren checks back into the game, and I'm thinking, and you were probably thinking, get Jaren the ball automatically. Let's get back to work. Scottie Pippen Jr. gets the ball, drives to the basket, misses. Lakers go another end, score. Now they have an 8-point lead. So there were situations like that. But overall, the Grizzlies did a really good job of, one, getting Jaren Jackson Jr. the ball and getting out of the way. And two, Jaren had a pretty efficient game overall, just, being dominant, being forceful. He was the one who drew the 5th foul on Anthony Davis in the third quarter when Anthony Davis was already trying to play cautious. But when Jaren's throwing those spin moves at you and things like that, like it's hard. It's really hard, which is why he got to the line 8 times in this game. Just really encouraged, about what he's bringing to the table. Jaren really looks like a dominant NBA scorer at this point, and that isn't something that I've been comfortable with saying in the past. He's always looked, like a player who's capable of being a dominant NBA scorer. But right now, what we're seeing, if you factor in pretty much this entire stretch that Ja's been out these last 3-4 games, you're seeing a dominant scorer in Jaren Jackson Jr. Marcus Smart also made his return after missing the past 6 games, and he came off the bench. I asked him after the game, I said, Marcus, what was it like coming off the bench? And his word was, it was different. But, Marcus Smart, he's a pro, wasn't he complaining or anything like that. He basically just said it was different, but, you come into the game, he wanted to make an impact, and he did that. Marcus Smart was an overall positive while he was on the floor in this game. He really was good in the first half, knocked down a couple 3-pointers in the first half, as well as, made some really good defensive plays. I think on his very first defensive possession, he ripped the ball from Austin Reeves, and then as he was falling out of bounds, he threw the ball off Austin Reeves so the Grizzlies could get the ball back. So you had some really good defensive moments from him as well. He also guarded LeBron James, a lot in this game. But, yeah, just having Marcus Smart back as an option, back as someone who could, be a playmaker as well. I know everyone's not too fond of the whole point guard idea, but Marcus Smart, some of you are. But at the end of the day, he led the team in assists with 6, came off the bench. He did have some turnovers in there. I think Marcus ended the game with 4 turnovers. But a couple of those, like one of those turnovers was he expected Scottie Pippen Jr. to stay at the 3-point line. Scottie Pippen Jr. cut to the basket. He threw it to the 3-point line. Ball goes out of bounds. Turnover on Marcus Smart. So there were a couple situations like that where it's just little chemistry things. And with the free-flowing offense that the Grizzlies play, we've talked about this. When you play an offense that's so free-flowing like this and basically you're not really running a lot of plays, there are going to be situations where you have turnovers because there's a lot of free-flowing movement within the offense. So you pretty much not exactly guessing where guys have to be, but that's pretty much what you're doing. Like, you're not guessing because you should, basketball IQ and things like that, you should have an idea of where they're going to be. But it's not an exact science as well, whereas if you're running a set offense, such and such is going to come off of this screen and it's going to be in this exact spot. That's not really the case. But I think it was a positive performance for Marcus Smart overall. He was impactful. I think in the second half, he really did more as a playmaker with his 6 assists. He was in the game late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter for that stretch when the Grizzlies' lead started to go away as well. And in that stretch, you saw him try to be much more aggressive offensive scorer, which I think was for the best because you didn't have other guys on the floor. Jaren and Zach Edey were out of the game during that stretch when the Lakers started to really make that comeback and turn the tide late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter of that game. But overall, I think Marcus Smart was solid. Um, we'll see if this coming off the bench thing is something permanent going forward. I think it was the right decision. I said it before the game. When I saw it, I said, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what the Grizzlies should do." So we'll see. If it was just a one game thing or if this is something that'll continue to unfold over the course, of these next few games coming up as the Grizzlies kind of, try to find which lineup combinations work best. Speaking of working best, we saw Zach Edey kind of working at his best in some ways, but then we saw, some low points from Zach Edey as well. I want to talk about all of that coming up here on Locked on Grizzlies. But before we talk about that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, there are live events out here, and if you want to go to some of these live events, Gametime is where you need to go get your tickets. Because listen up, look, use the Gametime app right now to take advantage of all the different features that come with it and all the perks. And some of those perks, look, you get game time picks, right? Makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is, all in pricing. All you got to do is toggle in through the feature, the all in pricing feature, and it'll show you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Then you get seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So you'll have a good idea of the view that you'll get all before you even purchase your ticket. And speaking of purchasing your ticket, you can get the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference of anywhere else. You get Gametime ticket coverage as well. Your purchase will be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. At this point, you got to be saying, "Damichael, how can I take advantage of this opportunity?" Well, I'm glad you asked. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with Gametime Picks. All you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONGrizzlies for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDON. That's capital L, capital O, and on, and then Grizzlies to take advantage of that offer. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, let's talk Zach Edey. Coming up next. The big man had a very impactful game for the Grizzlies, the rookie center, Zach Edey. It was eventful. So we found out that Brandon Clark wasn't going to start, right? Before the game, Brandon Clark left toe soreness. It was revealed that he would not be in the starting lineup. A lot of people kind of assumed at that point that Zach Edey, going against Anthony Davis, would probably be the starting center. No, it actually was Jay Huff. Taylor Jenkins threw another curveball and elected to go with Jay Huff as the starting center, and didn't go too well early on. That did not go too well early on. Grizzlies struggled on the glass, a bunch of other things, and the Grizzlies were down 38-26 at the end of the first quarter, 12-6 Lakers rebounding advantage, and that was in part due to it. But in the second quarter, the Grizzlies had the rebounding advantage. The third quarter as well, and Zach Edey's hands was all over that. Zach Edey was plus 13 in the first half. Plus 13 in 12 minutes, I believe it was. Or he was plus 12 in 13 minutes. But he was really good. And Zach Edey's physicality completely shifted things for Anthony Davis. At one point, Anthony Davis was out-rebounding the entire Grizzlies starting lineup in the first half. I think he had 8 rebounds at one point, and the Grizzlies starting lineup had like 5. So it wasn't even close. But Zach Edey came in the game with his physicality. He was battling on the offensive glass. Anthony Davis wasn't even trying to score against him. Like, he couldn't score against him, in the paint. So Zach Edey, his presence, his physicality, without him even scoring much. Like, he finished this game with 12 points, 8 rebounds. But at that time, he wasn't even really scoring that much. And his presence just changed the game. This was a big-time performance for Zach Edey from the standpoint of he showed, to me, the good things in terms of why he is a difference maker for this team. And these are things that the Grizzlies have needed. These are big question marks for this team coming into this season. If you've been a Grizzlies fan for over a year, which I'm sure a lot of you have, you remember that 2023 playoff series against the Los Angeles Lakers. The Grizzlies got bullied. They just got straight up bullied. There was no Steven Adams. And, they got dominated inside. And Anthony Davis was probably the best player in that series. What we saw in this game was, hey, we don't got Steven Adams no more, but we got another guy who you're not going to bully. And that's what happened. Zach Edey did not get bullied in this game. Zach Edey completely changed things from a physicality standpoint when he entered the game. And as a Grizzlies fan, you should be saying that's exactly what we wanted when we got Zach Edey. That's what we wanted. We got ourselves a big who, in the post-Steven Adams era, is not going to get bullied. He was aggressive on the offensive glass. Even when he didn't come down with the board, there were several times where he was trying to tip the ball out, and Lakers guys had, arms wrapped around him, all type of stuff. Basically, just typical things you see with the best offensive rebounders and rebounders, period. Like, guys have trouble, keeping them, out of the area. And that's the case with Zach Edey in this game. So that's the good. We just shout a lot of praise on Zach Edey and all the great things that he did in this game. Now I want to touch on the bad a little bit. And I got a story out of the Commercial Appeal. Make sure you guys go check that out as well. You can check out my story at commercialappeal.com. And it goes deeper, a deeper dive, as you will, into what happened with Zach Edey in this game, from the highs, the lows, what Taylor Jenkins, other players on the Grizzlies said about his performance. But here's what I noticed, and then some of, what we talked about with the players and all that good stuff. But late in that game, the Lakers targeted Zach Edey. And we got to talk about this because I think to the naked eye, and this is, the Grizzlies are a very smart fan base. I love talking to all the Grizzlies fans out there because you guys are very knowledgeable, and you help me become more knowledgeable. And I say this to say that there are certain things that even me, myself, until I ask the players and coaches and we dive deeper into it, there are certain things that we really don't notice probably as much as the players in the moment, and that the coaches immediately catch on to. And I say that to say because I know a lot of people were saying, oh, why aren't they starting Zach Edey and things like that in this game? And it's because of, pretty much what happened late in this game with the Lakers. So there were a couple times where the Lakers, you'll have to go back and watch it to visually see it. But the Lakers were up 111-110. There was about 4 minutes left in the game. And that lead quickly turned into 118-110. And in that stretch, you saw 3 plays on the defensive end where Zach Edey was pretty much directly involved. And the Lakers just went at him. Two for sure. And the third one was just Anthony Davis making a very good pass. Zach Edey didn't pressure the basketball. He was sagging off of him. That was that. But the 2 before that, you saw a LeBron James, Anthony Davis pick and roll. And Edey was guarding Anthony Davis. So he's telling Anthony Davis as Davis comes up to set the screen. Davis sets the screen. And LeBron James appears to be going downhill, which Zach Edey helps on LeBron. And while Zach Edey's helping on LeBron, Austin Reeves comes up, sets a back pick on Zach Edey. Wide open dunk for LeBron the first time. The second time he set the back pick on Zach Edey, Anthony Davis picked and popped. Wide open three-pointer, cash money. Just like that, 116-110 Lakers and timeout Grizzlies. And I pointed out this moment in particular where it was 111-110 because the Lakers called a timeout after a Zach Edey layup. Zach Edey had a layup. It was 111-110 timeout. And I'm pretty sure in that timeout they said, let's drop some stuff. Let's go with this rookie. Let's test him out. And it worked because you know what Zach Edey said to me after the game? Those actions with those back picks from Austin Reeves, with Anthony Davis being 6'10", handling the ball, and LeBron James and Anthony Davis putting him in some of those situations. Zach Edey told me he's never guarded that action before. It was different. And even to take it a step further, Marcus Smart told me that the Grizzlies studied these things. So I know a lot of people like to take shots at Taylor Jenkins and how he prepares players and whatnot. According to Marcus Smart, the Grizzlies studied those actions, as in they attempted to prepare for them. But it's one thing to study them, and then it's another thing when you're put in a position and you've never seen it before, which was the case with Zach Edey. It's not a cause for concern at all. As Marcus Smart said, as Luke Kennard, when I talked to him, Scottie Pippen Jr. as well, when I talked to him, they all said pretty much the same thing. It's going to come down to experience. Experience. As Zach Edey gets more experience, he's going to get used to what certain teams like to do. Oh, the Lakers, the last time I played them, they set the back pick on me with Austin Reeves. He'll be more prepared. He'll be ready to adjust, and that'll be that. So when I say highs and lows, it's more of just that's kind of the way that this game played out. In the first half, pretty much in the second and third quarter, Zach Edey was arguably the most impactful Grizzlies player on the floor. And then when you go to the fourth quarter, especially late in the game, the Lakers attacked them. It is what it is. They went right at them, and it worked to their advantage. They went up 118 to 110. Grizzlies never really, kind of recovered from that. I think it was 116 to 110 when Jaren Jackson Jr. checked back in the game. And you're already down 6 with Jaren checking back to the game. It was pretty much curtains at that point. But just a couple things that we noticed from the game on Zach Edey, talking to Taylor Jenkins, about it, talking to Zach Edey himself. I mean, I found it very surprising that he said he's never guarded against some of those things, but Marcus Smart really wasn't surprised that the Lakers went to some of those things to go at Zach Edey. And at the end of the day, everyone sounds super confident in how he'll come from this. And if you've been watching Zach Edey up to this point, you've seen the progressions from Summer League, from preseason, game by game. You're seeing a player who's growing rapidly. So I think this is nothing. This is just a mental mark that he's going to check book. He's going to check, say, okay, put that in the book and learn from it. So I think that's going to be the case with Zach Edey. Speaking of learning from it, Taylor Jenkins made some decisions in this game that he'll probably learn from as well. We'll talk about some of those decisions and what they meant for the Grizzlies coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies. Before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. There's no better opportunity out there. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view the live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today and go join FanDuel.com and take advantage of these opportunities. Because if you join right now, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. All you got to do is win a first $5 bet. Just put a little $5 on it. I got 5 on it. Just put $5 on it. And then guess what? $150 bonus bet. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Oh, boy. Zach Edey. We talked about the decision, right? You brought him off the bench. That was Taylor Jenkins' first big decision in the game. I didn't have a problem with the decision. Now, I know some of you will look back now and say that you did, but I would like to know, who really had a problem with J. Huff starting in this game based off what we've seen up to this point. Now he hasn't. The Grizzlies haven't gone against Anthony Davis, so now when hindsight is always 20/20. In hindsight, Anthony Davis was a different beast. But when you factor in, the rim protection that the Grizzlies have gotten from J. Huff, the ability to shoot the 3-pointer, stretching the floor, and before the game, I'm thinking, you know what? maybe if you get Jay Huff to bring Anthony Davis away from the basket, now you got more spacing, more driving lanes for guys like Scottie Pippen Jr., who likes to drive the basketball. So more driving lanes for Jaren Jackson Jr., who is, great at driving as well. So I'm like, okay, you know, that decision might work out for them, but it didn't. And the reasons, like if you would told me that it wasn't going to work out, it would have been pretty predictable as to why. You know, Jay Huff is not as good of a rebounder as Zach Edey, and that played out in the first quarter. The Lakers dominated the Grizzlies on the glass. Anthony Davis was dominating, having his way on the glass. Rui Hachimura at one point got a clean offensive rebound where I saw with my own eyes Jay Huff was supposed to block him out, and he didn't. So it was a struggle for Jay Huff in this one early in the game. That decision didn't work out for Taylor Jenkins, but I'm not looking at that decision and thinking, oh, it was a terrible decision based on what we knew before the game. Now, clearly, and I'll say this clearly, based on how the game played out, you can make an argument that if Zach Edey starts the beginning of this game, the Grizzlies win. They don't go down 38-26 in the first quarter. They're not down 15 points at any point. They probably jump out and get their own lead. And then when the Lakers and LeBron James and Anthony Davis are trying to make that run late in the game, the Grizzlies are playing from ahead instead of playing from behind. And you could just say you could deal with it in a multitude of ways. You could say, hey, you could still play Zach Edey, or you could say, Zach Edey, you've done your work today. Let's go put in, whatever Jake LaRavia defensive versatile option that you want to put out there, and let's close this thing out. So you could say that, but I think that would be a very hindsight answer based on this thing. But I think what we saw in this game does bode well for Zach Edey and his starting chances going forward. But again, every team is different. Like, for example, you just faced off against Anthony Davis. The next game is against the Golden State Warriors, who do not have an Anthony Davis. They got Trace Jackson Davis, and Draymond Green. Neither of those guys are likely to, be like Anthony Davis entered this game leading the NBA in scoring. It's just a whole nother level. It's a whole nother level. A couple other decisions. So Jaren Jackson Jr. picked up his fifth foul. I think it was late in this game, midway through the fourth quarter. And I saw Taylor Jenkins look back at his assistant coaches, look over at the bench, look like he didn't know what he wanted to do. Matter of fact, he wanted to challenge it. But I asked him after the game about it, and he didn't see enough. This was the play where Jaren Jackson Jr. got the offensive foul for lowering his shoulder, into the player. And, Taylor basically said that he looked at it, and he didn't determine that they had enough. He determined that there was not enough there for him to challenge and for the Grizzlies to potentially overturn Jaren's fifth foul. But Jaren's fifth foul was a big deal because eventually he came out of the game. And as I said earlier, that's kind of when the run happened. The Lakers went up 116-110. That was all she wrote by the time that he got back in. John Conchar had a rough night as well, and Taylor Jenkins played him. And the thing about him playing John Conchar in this game is John Conchar was the 10th man in the rotation. And I say that because there are plenty examples. There are plenty of times that we've seen Taylor Jenkins, especially start, this point of most regular seasons, where he goes to a nine-man rotation. So in theory, John Conchar didn't even have to be in the rotation in this game. And I don't even know if that was the plan. But what we saw take place was Zach Edey fouled out. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 5 fouls. Scottie Pippen Jr. at one point, had a couple fouls on him. I think Jake LaRavia had 2 fouls quickly in the first quarter. Zach Edey and Jake LaRavia both picked up 2 first quarter fouls, at that. So I think the foul trouble really played into the decision to play John Conchar. John Conchar was a negative in this game if you didn't watch. Took 1 shot in 11 minutes. I know Joe Mullinax will love that. Missed this 1 shot in 11 minutes. 2 assists, 3 rebounds. And he was also in the game late in the third, early in the fourth, when the Los Angeles Lakers pretty much made their run and they were able to take the lead. I don't know if I really agree with the decision to play John Conchar, but I don't know what other options Taylor Jenkins had. He would have had to move Santi Aldama and Jake LaRavia up as probably the 2 and the 3. In a way, you have Marcus Smart in there as well, but they just kind of ran out of perimeter bodies at that point. That's why it's good that Vince Williams is getting close and Desmond Bain is starting to do some contact drills and whatnot. So all of that is good for the Grizzlies because I think that was just a simple case of the bodies just not being there on the perimeter. But remember, everyone, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Grizzlies Daily Newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me on today. You'll be with my co-host Joe Monex on tomorrow. I'm going to be headed out to San Francisco for the Grizzlies-Lakers game. If you want to check out everything, all my coverage, you can follow me on X at Damichael C and check out my work at thecommercialappeal.com. As the game will be on Friday, so I won't be back with you until after Sunday's game as well. But we'll break down everything the players said. And there's one guy, I said his name a little bit earlier. I'll say his name, Vince Williams. He's really close to being back. Could he be back against the Warriors? We'll find out very soon. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On